All right, everybody, welcome into Around the Felt. We're going to be doing the Buffalo Bills tonight, breaking down their 2024 season, giving them a letter grade. Also going to be getting into, where they can go for 2025. I got my co-host Colin here, and then we got Dan, who's here tonight, writing some blogs for us. So how you guys doing?
Doing great, man. It's a great day to talk football.
Let's go, dude. Feels good, man. I know Bills fans probably not too happy with the way the season ended, but this is a fun team to talk about. So a lot of positives, but of course, the ultimate negative falling again to Patrick Mahomes. So it'll be fun to talk about this team and see how they can finally get over the hump next season.
Now, Dan, we'll let you go first. Kind of, what did you give the Bills on their season?
In terms of I kind of look at it as what the expectations were coming into the year. And obviously, we were so pedestrian on paper. Everybody was like, oh, it's the Dolphins year finally. Oh, it's the Jets. They got Aaron Rodgers. He's healthy. They signed all these guys. It was based on what we were projected to be, I thought it was a massive success. You take a team that's not even projected to finish first in their own division, and they make it all the way to the AFC Championship, which hadn't happened since, I think, 2020. So, overall, at the end, obviously, it kind of puts a bad taste in your mouth, given the performance. I'd probably give it around an A-, to be honest, given the pieces we had. Everybody left. Diggs and Davis left. Half the team left. So I would say based on what we were given, I'd say it was overall a huge success to even make it that far.
Yeah, I gave them a B. And maybe it should have been more like a B plus, because I do agree with you. You had a lot of losses. The national media kind of was writing you guys off, but ultimately you do figure it out. You do get there, and then once again you just run into the Kansas City Chiefs and cannot get past them. You got past Baltimore, and even that you didn't look pretty in the second half. But who cares? A win's a win. But you just run into Kansas City again, and once again you come up short, and you leave the season saying yeah, we know Josh is a guy. Yeah, Sean McDermott is a great coach, but is he the guy that will get us over the top? I don't know, but, most teams struggle to find that kind of success, and you ask other fan bases like me as a Jet fan, I would kill to have a guy like Sean McDermott that's getting us into the playoffs every year, but now you maybe ask a Bills fan, and they're like, I don't know. He's yet to get us to the promised land, so is he really our long-term guy? So I ultimately ended with B, leaning towards a B plus on them. But Colin, what did you give them?
I'm in the same boat as you, my friend. I gave him a B. It might seem a little harsh. I could see the argument for a B plus or even an A- because they did get to the AFC Championship game here. Offensively, everyone thought they're going to take a step back, losing Stefon Diggs. How is this team going to look? The receiving core, a lot of question marks. You drafted Keon Coleman, and yeah, he had some nice games, but the consistency wasn't there, and kind of the problems that you thought were there in the draft with the route running and how big of a factor is he going to be. Those same issues consisted, but he did have some really freak athlete type of plays, which is also what you saw him do at Michigan State and Florida State in college. So I still have hopes for Keon Coleman. I don't know if he'll ever develop into an alpha number one, but I think he could certainly be a really solid piece for this offense. Of course, Josh Allen MVP, whether you think he should have won it or not, he did. And it was a phenomenal season out of him. The James Cook breakout was awesome. The dude just scored a shit ton of touchdowns. It was crazy, automatic, a ton of big runs for him. So that's a positive. The offensive line is great. They were one of the best in terms of pass protection. And, that's the one thing with the Bills is when you go and play them, you're going to struggle to get Josh Allen down to the ground. One, because he's 6'5" and 250, but two, Deion Dawkins protecting his blind side. The rest of that offensive line is just really dominant. So that persisted. That's a positive. Defense certainly has some pieces that I like. Matt Milano getting hurt again. That's your boy Reagan. That was tough because he's a stud. Ed Oliver is really good in that D-line. You like how you've seen Greg Rousseau develop out of Miami. He was really good this year. The secondary, not quite. And, you lost guys like Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, Tre'Davious White, and you're 24th in passing defense. So that's a problem. I think that's a hole they're going to have to address this offseason. And Rasul Douglas, who was solid as their number one corner, is also a free agent. So it's going to be a problem. Despite that, though, they were still the 11th scoring defense. So a great team. 13 wins is awesome, but ultimately you fell short of the ultimate goal once again. It's not even that you took the next step to get to the Super Bowl and fell short. You lost to Patrick Mahomes again, which sucks. And I'm in the boat where it's not Josh Allen the reason not getting over the hump, because Josh Allen does go toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes, and he does have legendary games as well. And certainly when you look at him statistically and their matchups in the postseason, they're neck and neck. You have to wonder, what is it going to take to get over the hump? You know what I mean? Because you could point to personnel here and there, and they might not be as good of a team on paper now as they were 3 years ago because you had to give Josh Allen the extension. But Josh Allen's elevated himself, and he elevates those around him. Also, Khalil Shakir. I mean, he just got rewarded with an extension. He had an awesome year. I think he almost had 500 yards after the catch, so that's awesome. Like, you do have guys that Josh Allen has shown he could take them to the next level. But I don't know what it's going to take for this team to finally get over the hump. And, hey, if they fall short again next year, that's a great question, Reagan. Is Sean McDermott the guy to get it done? I'd be curious to hear Dan's thoughts. Are you a big believer in Sean McDermott?
Yeah, so I kind of look at it as everybody takes a lot of heat for not being able to beat Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid in the playoffs, deservedly so. But the thing is, like, nobody really beats Mahomes, whether it's Sean McDermott, whether it's Kyle Shanahan. People just give Josh the most crap because obviously he's had the most chances. But I mean, two of the biggest things, like, the Chiefs are great, but they're also incredibly consistent. That's why, like, you know how it's going to go in a neck and neck game. You always know the Chiefs are going to come out on top because they just don't shoot themselves in the foot. I mean, disregarding the Super Bowl, obviously, but they don't shoot themselves in the foot like all these other teams tend to do when they play the Chiefs. And the two biggest things I noticed that we need to amp up, because I do think McDermott's overall a solid coach, and teams have won the Super Bowl with inferior coaches to Sean McDermott. So I mean, unless Bill Belichick comes back to the NFL, I don't know who you're going to get that's better than McDermott. I mean, I'm all ears if the same thing happens next year. But the two biggest things I noticed is that the defense every single year when we play the Chiefs, like every single playoff loss, the defense has given up, like, I think 32 points on average. So that's a huge problem. That's the biggest reason we lose, because I'm not saying like Josh Allen is perfect, although, I'm a Bills fan. I'd like to believe so. But he does his job. The offense does their job more often than not. The problem is the defense cannot get pressure on Patrick Mahomes and get them off the field. And they give up a lot of points and a lot of yards. Every single game, it's the same story. So I'd say the biggest thing is we got to upgrade. I don't mean to get too far ahead of myself, but we definitely have to upgrade the pass rush, because if he has all day to throw, I mean, your corners and stuff can be great, but if they're just getting worn down time and time again, that's going to be a problem. And then obviously the lack of firepower on the offense. Like, I mean, I don't mean to disrespect Khalil Shakir or anybody else, but that was the whole thing our OC was talking about this year. Everybody eats, because, and it's great, like they basically hijacked the power of friendship to get all the way to the AFC Championship. But at the end of the day, if we are lucky enough to face the Philadelphia Eagles or like a 2023 Madden team and like the San Francisco 49ers, you're at the end of the day, like, you're going to need firepower to go up against these guys. You're going to. And everybody wants to talk about, like, our defense wasn't that bad and all that. I think we led or tied the league in turnovers, like forcing turnovers, which was great. But the problem is, like, unless you're doing that game in and game out, you take those turnovers away, the defense was really not that good. I felt like we relied on forcing turnovers far too much. We were getting cooked, like, up and down the field. And then as well as, like, when Christian Benford went down, like, he's like our lockdown corner. He's an amazing player. But the problem is, Rasul Douglas, he's a good player. He had a little bit of a down year, but our backup corners, like Kyer Elam, who was a first-round draft pick, he got destroyed. When Christian Benford went out with an injury, they targeted Kyer Elam, and they did it successfully. He got burned. He got called for pass interference, holding. Like, he was a liability. So I think the biggest thing is, I mean, obviously coaching can be improved, but I think this past playoff loss was not necessarily on Coach McDermott. This was on the defense's inability, once again, to get Patrick Mahomes off the field and pressure him, I would say.
I would agree with that 100%. And, I love the Kyer Elam shout out because I'm a Florida Gators fan and I loved him at Florida. And I thought when the Bills took him, I was like, oh, let's go. Like, Elam's going to be a stud. Problem is, he's never been good in the league. Like, not even like as a rookie, you were like, okay, like he's struggling to see the field, but this is a loaded team. But opportunities presented themselves when Tre'Davious White left the building. And it's crazy when you take a guy in the first round, he can't step into that role. So, and I agree with you also with the point where they do need to add more juice to the pass rush. You gave Von Miller that massive contract a couple years back, and clearly he's just not the same caliber of guy. So you can't really rely on him to be that in the postseason at this point of his career. So, and every time Patrick Mahomes has lost in the Super Bowl, he's been running for his life the entire game. Like, that's the recipe you need. And for a Bills team that always seems to match up with them in the postseason, I think that's a recipe that they should follow.
Yeah. So why don't we segue into, where they can go with all the cap space and the draft picks this year?
Oh, all their cap space. Yeah, they're 10 million over. So they're gonna have some work to do here. This is what happens when you pay your quarterback a ton of money. But hey, we've seen teams like the Eagles. You mentioned you're going to need firepower to match up with those teams. And it's like, yeah, the Bills do have a lot of good pieces. They do have a dominant offensive line. So are the Eagles. And they have A.J. Brown. They have Devontae Smith. They have Saquon Barkley. They have firepower. But so the Bills are going to have to maneuver the cap in some ways in order to address this team and get better. Some free agents that they have, Amari Cooper, I don't see him coming back. Never really carved out a major role for this offense. Rasul Douglas, I don't know. I doubt it. I could see DeMar Hamlin coming back. Spencer Brown, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, certainly out the door. So, they're going to have a little bit of holes to fill.
MBS, yeah. MBS.
I'm
well,
sorry,
they might still owe him money, but
but he's on the Saints. But they owe him a little
Now,
bit.
Dan, I'm curious, where do you want them to go at pick 30?
At pick 30, honestly, I'm saying give it up and trade for somebody. And this was a big talking point with my friend, like I was talking to my friends. When you look at our general manager, Brandon Beane, and how our first-round draft picks have panned out, we do not draft well in the first round. We might as well give it up and get a guy who's actually good. The only first-round draft pick Brandon Beane has hit that really turned out to be the difference maker was Josh Allen. Everybody else was, decent, but not, I'd rather trade for somebody that's going to be, good right off the bat. After Josh, we drafted Ed Oliver in the first round. And he's been, he kind of reminds me of the defense's version of Gabe Davis. Like, he can be great in splash plays, and then you will not hear from him for 2 or 3 games. He had his one standout season last year with almost 10 sacks. And then this year, all the time, this was supposed to be our cornerstone on defense. And when I was watching the press conference, like the post-game press conferences, Sean McDermott would always have to answer, where is Ed Oliver? Where is Ed Oliver? He's supposed to be your guy. He's supposed to be your not Aaron Donald, but you know what I mean? He's supposed to be like your bona fide stud on that defensive line, and he just disappears. And he had a down year this year. And you look at the other first-round draft picks. Obviously, we were talking about Kaiir Elam. He's been, unfortunately, I like the guy. I like his mindset, but he hasn't seen the field. And every time he takes the field, all he seems to do is get called for holding or pass interference. Then you have Dalton Kincaid, another first-round draft pick. They were saying arguably the best tight end of the draft. He hasn't been a bad player, but he hasn't been what he was drafted to be. The same thing with Keon Coleman in the first round. Solid player, but again, they're not hitting in the first round the way they're meant to. And we tend to draft so late in the first round anyway that we're not really going to get anybody of substance. So as far as first round pick, if somebody like a Max Crosby or Myles Garrett is available, I say give up the pick and trade, because we don't tend to draft well anyway. So what's the point,
I think it's a valid point, because then you could start dabbling with the void years and pushing that money down the road. If you trade for a guy like Myles Garrett or Max Crosby, you can get him an extension, lower the cap this year so you could fit him in now and worry about it later. And, that's helping you gear up to go against Patrick Mahomes in the postseason. And I liked it. We totally just skipped over Kincaid because it was such a quiet season for him. But I like that you brought that up too, Dan. What a disappointing sophomore year for him when he had really high expectations.
Yeah, and it's also nice for you guys. I know you have 2 second-rounders this year too, with the Stefon Diggs trade to Houston, I believe. And I know you have a couple 4th-rounders, so I don't hate that at all. I really do like the idea of going for Crosby or Garrett, really tooling it up, because ultimately I think Allen, no matter who he has, will get you enough on offense. I'm sure there's always more that can be done, but I think the biggest issue is just stopping Patrick Mahomes. It's not outscoring Patrick Mahomes. It's stopping Patrick Mahomes because you have enough. It's been proven at this point. You will never beat him by outscoring him. So something needs to happen on the defensive side of the ball. So if you can go out and get one of those 2 game wreckers, your odds are you're probably not winning that scratch off ticket with that late first round pick and getting someone of that caliber. And even if they happen to be that caliber, are they going to be that caliber right away? No. So I do like that perspective. I mean, like Colin said, it'll be interesting to see how they maneuver the cap. I mean, I would like to see them try to get another weapon at wide receiver. I do like Keon. It's good they just paid Shakir, locked him up long term, but I still feel like with Shakir and Keon, like neither of them are your number one. But I don't know if there's anyone on the market that there is. I mean, I actually could see maybe them going out and getting DeAndre Hopkins on a veteran type deal. Not that he has that much left in the tank, but he didn't look terrible in the Super Bowl. He kind of faded out like as the playoff run went along and towards the end of the season in terms of snap percentage, but in the Super Bowl, he looked good to me. So I wouldn't hate that, but I don't know. But then again, like you bring in Amari Cooper and you don't really utilize him or need him. It was kind of just like spreading the love, friendship of love, like you said, or what was it exactly?
Yeah, just like they just harnessed the power of friendship. They took a
Yeah.
bunch of guys. They really made the team work. And I mean, that's literally what it was. I'm like, they just took a bunch of misfit toys, put them together, and it seemed to work. And I mean, people give McDermott a lot of crap, but I mean, what he did with what he was given is actually incredibly impressive. Because like, you take Josh Allen away. This is why I thought he should be MVP. You take away Josh Allen away from that team, I'd be shocked if we even had like 6 or 7 wins. Because who do we have? Who do we like? There's nobody, unfortunately. And that's what's so disappointing. You have like arguably the best quarterback in the league, certainly top 3. It's like get the guy some help. Like I mean, I look at it like this. Like I look at his contemporaries around the league, right? Joe Burrow, for as nefarious as his defense is, he has T. Higgins and the Triple Crown receiver, Jamar Chase, right? A.J. Brown, I'm sorry, Jalen Hurts, he has A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Saquon Barkley. Patrick Mahomes, he at least has that defense. Josh Allen has what, James Cook? Like, I mean, get him some help,
Yes, I think there's certainly a couple ways that they can go in the offseason here, particularly in the back end of that draft. They could potentially add a weapon. If a guy like Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State is there, I think he could be a fit. Or Luther Burden, if he slides that far, he's more of a deep threat. I think he could be a fit. I could also see him attacking that defensive line. Oh, I would have loved a guy like Shamar Stewart out of A&M to make it there. I don't know if you saw this today, but Shamar Stewart posted the 3rd best athletic score at the combine from any defensive lineman since they started doing it, out of like 2,000 defensive linemen. And the production was never there for him. I think his best season was like 3 sacks, or he might have 3 sacks his whole career. But just an absolute freak athlete that would make a lot of sense for the Bills. But due to that, he won't make it that far. But, Nick Scorton from A&M, maybe Michael Williams not going to be there. Maybe Derek Harmon, D-tackle from Oregon. Maybe they address the secondary. A guy like Malachi Starks from Georgia to add to the back end, I think it'd be a good piece because they do need help on the back end.
Fuck. Am I? I'm not muted.
Yeah, you're going. No, you're going.
Okay, gotcha. Sorry, I was like, should I raise my hand? This is actually, I don't want to, talk too much here because I know we're on a limited time frame. But what's funny is that you guys ever play Clash of Clans? That they have the laboratory. You take a crappy troop and you just like run it through the lab. You just upgrade the hell out of it. That's what McDermott tends to do. Because what's interesting is that so many of our good players are late round draft picks. Like I said, we don't draft well in the first round, but we seem to make up for it. Like James Cook, 2nd round pick. Terrell Bernard, our only other captain outside of Josh Allen, 3rd round pick. Christian Benford was a 6th round pick out of Villanova. Turned out to be one of the best corners in the league. Khalil Shakir, 5th round pick out of Boise State. Like, I mean, they make the most out of their late round draft picks. Like the last dregs in the draft tend to be, what we use the most, which is why I'm not even worried about like whether we hit early or not in the early rounds, because McDermott, for whatever reason, particular on the defense, has a knack for taking these pedestrian players and just like upgrading the hell out of them. And all of a sudden you're like, Christian Benford, like 6th round pick out of Villanova, really? Like, I mean, versus he was in the same draft class as Kyer Elam. He was supposed to be Kyer's backup, and the 6th round pick turned out to be what he did. It's funny how that works for us.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Well, let's get Drock in here. You want to get Drock in, Reagan? You got something to say first?
No, I was just gonna say, like, I wouldn't hate any of those wide receivers falling for Buffalo either, because I still do feel like they're ultimately missing a true number one. So that would be cool for them if Luther Burden falls that far. I doubt it, or we could see them maybe doing what Kansas City did last year and trading up and going to get one of those guys. If you see Burden slipping up to the late 20s, especially with 2 second-round picks, then maybe they part with one to move up earlier into the first round.
Absolutely.
But Drock, what do you got for us?
Dan, by the way, I love playing cock, and I actually do have a maxed out Town Hall level 12, and I did the same thing, and I feel like I could relate my cock to Bills and Josh Allen, because I would just absolutely go crazy with the Electro Dragons in the laboratory. So I'm not kidding. This, and I would just unload dragons. All right.
If you didn't play Clash of Clans, you didn't have a good childhood.
Exactly. All right. My question for you guys: has Josh Allen peaked, or is he still capable of leading the Bills to the Super Bowl?
I'll let Dan go first on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's certainly capable of it. He just, he hasn't had the right supporting cast. Like, it's so frustrating because, we've seen this movie so many times. We've seen the sequel so many times. It's like the quarterback does his job. Again, I'm not saying he's perfect, but like you take it back to like the Kansas City game and the 13 seconds game. It's like, what more do you want your quarterback to do? He doesn't play defense, and especially with the roster he has this year, he doesn't have a ton of firepower on offense. It's funny because we scored like 30 plus points in 10 plus games this year. So the offense is productive. And the thought is, like, if we're doing that with a bunch of wide receiver 2s and 3s, what's going to happen when we actually get some star power in here and get some good edge rushers and defensive tackles? So I think Josh Allen, he's been the guy. He had a great season. He's certainly capable of it. He just hasn't had the right ingredients around him. He's 1 out of 53,
Yeah, I would say he has peaked in the sense that, like, he did win his MVP. I don't know if he's going to get better. Like, how much, even if he gets better, like, how much better is that? Where I think he's already at a Super Bowl quarterback level. So it ultimately comes down to the pieces around him. So he could have peaked, but he could still go on to win 3 Super Bowls, and he might not even need to play the way he has played. Because, I mean, you look at Patrick Mahomes, I think he already peaked the way he's played. I mean, he hasn't needed to be that MVP guy that's throwing 50 touchdowns in a season. So, yeah, that was his peak level. But when he needs to, he turns it on. But I'd say, the 50 touchdown Patrick Mahomes is the peak of what we'll see with him. I don't think he'll ever replicate that. So I think ultimately he doesn't need to play at the highest level. They just need to improve the team around him to get the Super Bowl.
Well, I push back there. I would say Mahomes' 50 touchdown season with 5,000 yards and a ring was his peak.
That's what I'm saying. Yes.
But how is Josh Allen at his peak if he hasn't won a Super Bowl? The ultimate peak of the sport of football is winning a Super Bowl. So
right,
if you're saying he hit his peak, you're saying he's not going to win a Super Bowl.
I'm saying there's a world where, next year his stats aren't even close to it and he's not even like close to being the MVP winner.
But if you win a ring, that's the peak. If he leads them to a Super Bowl, that's your peak more so than your statistical MVP season, I think.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I think that would be more of a team ring is what I'm saying, though. Like, if the defense is just sick and they go and beat
it's a team ring no matter what.
No,
honestly.
I know, but I'm saying if they finally get past Kansas City and they dominate them like they did this year, like the Eagles did this year, where, the defense really just made it uncomfortable and we've seen Patrick Mahomes get stopped. Are you going to look at him and be like, yeah, they finally got past him because Josh Allen elevated his game? No, he probably played the way he's been playing, but the pieces around him finally reached their peaks to get him to that level. So I think I don't know. I just feel like Josh Allen's done everything he's could. It just ultimately comes down to them getting enough pieces to stop Patrick Mahomes.
I'm in agreement with both of you guys where I don't think it's a Josh Allen problem. They haven't gotten over the hump. The dude is balled out. And you can always point back to the 13-second dilemma in which they fucking should have won that game, right? Let's be honest here. But Mahomes magic to Kelsey and Tyreek, and they didn't ultimately. But no, I don't think this is Josh Allen's peak. I hope he's not this generation's Jim Kelly that gets to the Super Bowl and falls short again. It's like, like if he actually starts getting there and losing, it's going to be heartbreaking because you want to root for this guy. He's a great dude. He's a baller. His MVP speech, like after with the the FaceTime call with the children. I don't know if you guys saw that, but like, Jesus Christ, like what a great guy. Like I root for him and I really want him to win a Super Bowl, and I will die on the hill that Josh Allen will win a Super Bowl in his career, and that will be his peak.
Dan, do you like that idea of him winning a Super Bowl?
Absolutely, dude. Absolutely. Like, it's funny because like everybody, because I'm like the only Bills fan a lot of people know. So whenever the Bills whenever they screw up, whenever they win a big game, I have people texting me like the 13-second game. I had people texting me like I lost a parent. To be honest, they were like, "Hey, man, I hope you're okay. Like, how you doing? How you feeling?" And I'm like, that's the first and only time I've ever cried over a football game. That was absolutely brutal. But I think certainly like because Josh. The big thing this year, part of why he won the MVP was because he did more with less. Pause. But and also because he what was I going to say? He did more with, and also because he cut down on his interceptions. That's been his one Achilles heel. It's like he's been an MVP candidate for a couple of years now, but he hasn't won it because he's thrown 15 plus picks. And I mean, as long as he can play.
Dan, is he there for you guys?
I think we lost him.
we may have lost Dan here.
I think we lost Dan here. Yeah, I liked where he was going with that though.
But yeah, Dan, we lost you for a second.
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. What cut out?
When you're at the Achilles heel, the interceptions, and then it cut out. You were frozen.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, basically, that's been his one weakness. And I mean, as long as he can play smart like he is now, and I mean, there's no reason to think like Josh Allen's not a player that's been like particularly up and down. We know he's been great. The only thing now is as long as he can continue like not throwing, a pick for every touchdown, and you get some better weapons around him. Like, I don't think there's no reason to think he can't elevate his game. I mean, he won the MVP, but his stats weren't that great. That was the whole argument for Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow, right? Like they had all these crazy stats, and I mean, you get him some play. Like our leading receiver was Khalil Shakir with like 800 yards. You get him some better receivers. He keeps cutting down on the picks. I mean, I don't see why he can't, even get even better than what we saw this year.
I agree with that.
For sure.
Well, that's going to wrap up our. All right, go ahead, Reagan. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say in agreement. I mean, I can't say I'm rooting for Josh Allen like you guys are as a Jet fan, but it is hard. He is a good guy. It's hard to root against him, but then I remember, hey, that's our division rival, and that makes me remember. Can't fully love the guy.
Can't do it. That's gonna wrap us up. Recapping the Bills' 2024 season and the 2025 offseason outlook. Dan, really appreciate you joining us, my friend. If you haven't done so yet, make sure you head on over to roundthefeltsports.com and check out some of these blogs that Dan has been cooking up for us. They are phenomenal.
Yeah, no, they really are. Dan, you got any final remarks?
Do good, be good, God bless, and go Bills.
But thanks for joining us, Dan. And let us know in the comments, Bills fans, like, where do you want them to go? Like, what's your idea for how this team finally gets to the Super Bowl and, maybe brings Buffalo home their first Super Bowl?